Hello, everyone. So I have gone through some major transitions in the past couple weeks. I'm planning for a massive wedding. And by massive, I mean I would be content to get married with like 3 people present. And we are having 100 people there. And I am excited to go on a honeymoon for 2 weeks, and I'm excited about all these big things. So if you've been following along on Instagram, you saw that I went wedding dress shopping, and just so many big changes are afoot. And if you heard last week's episode, you also know we're prepping and planning for baby, which is, I mean, you know how I am. I like to do it all and I like to do it big. But the number one question that I've been getting in my DMs during this process of everyone seeing me dive full on head first into my, newer, fancier, better aligned life is, Nicole, how did you know when your marriage was over? Like, how did you know that it was time to step out? And I know that this comes up a lot because so many of us are in places of transition. And when I say step out, I mean, not just your marriage, the job, your marriage, the friendship, like even being a mom, I'm stay at home. How do I know I need to return back to the workforce? And all this boils down to is just big decision making. And I know how I make my decisions. It's really and truly not something I struggle with. I may struggle with the anxiety and the nerves around moving forward, but I don't actually struggle with the decision itself, right? Like, I figure it out, I add some plan to it, and I get moving. So I decided to tap one of my dear, best good friends who is brilliant. She is smart. She is wise. She is a star of Preachers of LA that aired on Oxygen. I know everybody watched it. We all watched it. And there was like the Atlanta franchise, the Chicago franchise. And so she is, TV star. She's an author. She's written an incredible book called Hidden Behind the Lipstick. She is just everything and anything that you would need in a best friend, in a wise counsel. I mean, heck, she has been a first lady of a church. So she can help us figure out she has a foolproof system to help you make better decisions and to get unstuck. So, I mean, this is my go-to. Myesha Cheney, thank you so much for being here.
I just heard that introduction and I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's true.
Is she talking about me?
Yes, it is. Because listen, you're the first lady of a church. And so you know that you get everything. You get everything. Absolutely. From we want a divorce, we're having a baby, we're thinking about moving, he wants to start a business. People come to you.
Yeah. And it's been something that I've had to manage for a long time.
And and that I think is one of the things that so many of us lose sight of, is that when you're in that role as the, that counsel, there's so much pressure also around how you make decisions and how you carry yourself. So it's not just that you're giving advice, you're expected to manage your life a certain way too.
Absolutely. And that there are consequences when there's a misstep.
Ooh, so let's talk about the misstep. We're just going to jump right in here. So we are both divorcees, right?
Congratulations to us.
And it's so funny because, we say that and we clap and we laugh about it. But I think what we're celebrating is the fact that we were able to make a decision to live a life that's more in line with us and honestly what God's called over our lives.
Yes, absolutely. It is something to celebrate when you make it to the other side.
When you make it to the other side. But it's also not that we're celebrating a failed marriage or a marriage that actually just went in a different direction. I don't even want to call it failed because it just came to an end, a culmination, a finishing point. And I will say, though, as a first lady of a Black church that's on TV,
yes,
ma'am, I can't even get into what it must have been like for you to announce. I mean, actually, I think that your ex actually announced your divorce.
He did. He announced it on social media.
Shoo.
And he
Which
emailed it out.
We're not even calling the pastor part into question because what we don't do here is talk badly about our exes because it's not even that energy.
No, we don't even have to.
It's not even that energy. Yeah. But as just a person to have it announced on, so it's just difficult. It's just difficult.
And I didn't have any idea about all of these things, right?
Wow.
I helped a lot of people over the years. I've walked with people. I just saw the humanity in the process. I didn't lean into divorce too heavily because I didn't think that was something I would ever have to deal with. It was like, how can I be present for others? And it's one of those things that you don't know really what it's like until you are faced with that choice.
Yes.
Until the circumstances presents itself.
Yes, this is so true. And I announced my divorce on social media as well, but I talked to my ex about it first. Like I was like, hey, this is something that I think I'm going to reach the point where I'm going to have to share it, and these are some of the different things I'm considering. Do you have any thoughts about it? And he was like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's okay. And we shared it online. But, I will say that you're right. Like knowing other people are going to have a perspective on it, and especially in like a congregation. And I mean, people don't talk about it a lot, but when you're, a pastor and a first lady, like that's also your job.
It is.
So like your income could be affected if people like disapprove of it. Like there's just so much pressure that comes with the role. And was that scary for you?
It was scary for me because I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm a recovering control freak.
Yes, girl.
Part of my background is didn't grow up with very much, and I had finally gotten a stability that I had grown accustomed to. So no matter how my life looked on the outside or on the inside, it was my life.
Yes, and it was going to change.
Yeah, and any disruption was going to be painful for me.
And when you had kids, we didn't even talk about that.
I had 3 kids, and it was scary, but I knew enough to make the next right step.
So I love that, because I think it leads us to the next part. And part of why I wanted y'all to have that foundation is to hear that, Myesha is just like all of us, right? There's no point in time in your life where you're going to be like, well, I'm going to wait till I have less going on to start making choices.
Right.
No matter what, you're going to be called to make choices, which means we have to get really good at making choices, even in tight spots. And that you're literally one of the best people I know when it comes to deciding things. Like there is a quiet confidence about you that I think a lot of women really aspire to whenever it's part of why they come to you, because they're like, not that you seem to have it all going on, because we know, I mean, obviously publicly it's not perfect, right? But you're able to almost pick up the pieces and still function and serve in a way that's just really beautiful. So that being said, how did you know? How did you know that it was time? And I know that's tough.
I went through compounding losses. So we had the pandemic going on. We were in a multi-million-dollar renovation. There was high stress. My sister had seizures back to back to back. She was in the ICU. My dad, who is the strongest man I know, had a stroke. We dropped him off at the emergency room, didn't see him for another month after that. There was death on my ex-husband's side of the family. His 37-year-old sister-in-law died of brain cancer. His aunt died the same month. And it was just one thing after the next thing. My daughter attempted suicide in that same season.
Oh my God.
I ran out. I was done. I had nothing else to give. I had been working 120% of my capacity for years and years and years. And I finally got to my end. And in that season, it forced me to reevaluate my values. I had to sit down and say, Myesha, what kind of life do you want to live?
Yes.
And it was so overwhelmingly present that I felt like if I don't make a shift, I'm going to die. I did not know divorce was even on the table. I hadn't even considered it. I thought, okay, you can figure this out. You can take a break. You can go on a sabbatical. I had never taken a break. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I had to have everything figured out. I had to take care of everybody else, all of these scripts, all of these narratives. And I started sharing. And by this time, I had been in therapy probably for 3 years straight, getting courage to confront some real things in my life. I had started to build up the drivers to how do I make adjustments? What's going on inside of me? I don't have to be everything to everybody. You sure about that? Like,
this is all I know.
This is all I know.
Right.
And I'm figuring that out. So when I hit the wall and there was no other place to go, it was like you either die or you make a change.
Ooh, so let's hold on that one, y'all. So I just want to call out that, I mean, you've taken us on a little bit of a journey there, right? And getting to that point of I have to die or make a change, I relate to that. Obviously, I've shared so much of my story here about, getting to the point where like my health is failing. My body is breaking down. It is dying, so it's, if I don't make a change, this will end with me no longer being, right?
Yeah.
So I felt forced to do it just for survival. It was survival
Purely.
Instincts kicked in, right? But so many of the women who come to you aren't even all the way there yet. There are signs that come before that. And you actually called out one of them pretty early on, that you said your values were starting to become clear and you were noticing that they weren't in alignment. Would you say that was part of therapy? Would you say that like it's just all the compounding losses and how you're responding to the losses, that you were like, maybe I feel like my partner is, and again, we're not bashing in any way, shape, or form, because
totally.
I mean this about my partner as well. The way we responded to a lot of our compounding losses were just different. I wouldn't say that they were wrong, but they were just different.
Yes.
And that, when you have in tight quarters over and over and over again, plus you get the reflective private time of therapy and prayer, you really start wondering, do I want a partner that responds more similarly to the way that I do? Or do I need just a chance to do this myself and not have to worry about how my partner responds? Or do I need to grow and change and shift to respond more like my partner? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So where did the compounding losses fit in, plus therapy and all that, with really identifying your values? Because it sounds like that's the beginning of the process.
Yeah, I characterize myself as a robot. So I had values starting out in my marriage and my relationship.
Okay.
But I went numb. In order to survive, I just kind of functioned. I built a beautiful life from the outside.
Where
But
were
on
the values
inside,
from, though, that you're talking about? The ones
like,
that you got in the
so-
beginning? Because you got married young. I think we should call. I got married at 22. How old were you?
I met my ex-husband at 18. We got married at 21.
Yeah. So, I mean, we both got married when we were babies, which when we look back on it, now that we have kids that age, what were we doing?
I have no idea. I have no
You're
idea.
Like, girl, I do not know.
I was sitting in somebody's church, calling myself leading people. Okay,
Listen,
when I should have been sat down somewhere.
Sat down somewhere.
But I just mean a basic level.
Yes,
like I deserve love and respect. That I'm worthy. I do remember as an 18-year-old feeling like the world was big, and I felt excited and passionate about things, and I wanted to discover what this world had for me. And I think I did have the internal infrastructure for my life. It did need development, but there was something there.
The core was there.
The core of who I was there. And so for about 15 years, I was just numb.
Autopilot. So it almost sounds like, and this is something that I think is really important. If you all don't know, Myesha works with women. This is part of, obviously, not just her calling on this earth as manifested as being a first lady, but it's the work she does privately now as she supports women in transition, women trying in discovery, to figure out and get back to who they are. It's not the language of you don't know, it's the language of reclaiming.
Exactly.
And that's what you're telling me here.
That's what I'm saying. There was a core of a person. Because I thought it was easier for me to become what everybody else wanted me to be. I started to chase that. So whatever the congregation needed, whatever my ex-husband needed, then I had children right away. So whatever the kids needed. And it was less about me as a person and more about everybody else.
Wow.
I signed up for a graduate program, and it was deeply deconstructive. It was a master's in spiritual care, soul care, and spiritual formation. And they required 6 months of therapy to graduate. I had to go on silent retreats. I had to do weekly groups. And you're talking about a person who was spending 99% of my life taking care of everybody
servicing
else.
Everyone else. When I tell you, listen, there's a prayer that one of my friends, her name's Glow Atanmo. I don't know if you know her, but I love Glow. And she was talking about how she prayed the other day. She was like, please, God, show me myself, expose me. That prayer, we don't like that one. It stresses me out. Girl. And that's what therapy is like. It's like you go in there and you have this bubble, this room where it is not about anyone else. And you're just like, not you going to tell me about myself. I feel attacked here.
It was therapy.
Revealing.
So in order to graduate, I had to go 6 months. I got through the whole 6 months and I never brought up my marriage. I was so trained. I never spoke of anything in my entire relationship to anyone alive.
Wow.
We divorced at 18 years. That was for a good 13 years.
Okay, so let's pause on this. We are often told in society that we are not to talk about our marriages elsewhere.
I no longer say that.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
I don't agree with that anymore, because it took a therapist to look me in the eye after I went 5 years to weekly talk therapy.
Wow.
Okay, my last day was when my divorce was final. That was my last therapy session. This man walked me through everything. He told me things were wrong that I did not even know were wrong. So how do you, that's when people tell me like, you have to fight. And I get it. I used to preach it all the time that you tell your parents about it and then you reconcile with your partner. And then now your parents are still upset about it.
Intimate.
It doesn't, I paid somebody to hear me.
That's right.
And I didn't even know I needed it.
Ooh, so this is so, and I'm going to share something that I've never shared before, but I had the same moment in therapy where I went to therapy because in my situation, I felt like something must be wrong with me. Like my partner is clearly unhappy, you know, and I hold the weight of trying to make that better. And I also am not happy by extension because I don't feel like I'm getting the partnership I desire. So let me go to therapy because, you know, I was the only person who went. I went to therapy for 8 years and I was the only person getting regular sessions every single week. And so I was like, okay, I will, and I still go to therapy actually. Like I've been going to therapy nonstop for over a decade, but I went and there were a couple of really big pivotal moments that occurred in my marriage that I have yet to discuss publicly, you know, and I never shared them until maybe a year after I'd filed.
Wow.
No, maybe a year before I filed. And my therapist said, do you understand that what you just told me now colors everything else you've ever told me in the entire, how on earth, when you've been sitting here saying, I don't know why I'm not able to do this for him. She's like, this has been the answer of why, because this thing that occurred, it was such a fundamental rift in the relationship that there's no way you would have been able to do those other things. And it affects the way, it's kind of like going to a doctor's office and being like, I don't know what's going on with me, doctor. I have a lot of fatigue, but not telling him that you eat like a terrible diet. You know what I mean? Like you need to know the means, right? And so you're telling me that it wasn't until you had this sort of awakening first that gave you more clarity on your values. And then once you had that, you started, I guess, it sounds like, you know, especially with all these losses, everything you were learning about yourself, you're responding to these losses.
Yeah.
And then, and that was, I guess, leading you to a point.
Because as long as I was in the driver's seat and in control, and as long as I could figure out a way and work it out, I didn't have to go through the hardship of dealing with me.
But
this was the first time that everything was broken and I couldn't fix it.
Ooh.
And I looked to the right or to the left, and the support that I needed wasn't there. The understanding that I needed wasn't there. And it was with a heavy heart. And I still thought, well, we can just figure it out. Because as long as we're busy, as long as I was running, and as long as I was preoccupied, I couldn't deal with what was really going on. There was no way. The infrastructure of my life wouldn't allow for me to think thoughtfully about the kind of marriage I wanted. This is the marriage you got. And you're going to figure it out and you're going to keep on going. Well, this wall said, you have to reprioritize something or you're going to die.
Wow.
And it got so strong and so present.
Couldn't ignore it.
That I started cutting things out of my life. We can no longer work together. With my partner, we work together. It was my pastor. It was the father of my kids. It's the head of my home. And the pie that was for Myesha got really, really small. And it was like 10% of my life was for me. And I started to have a problem with that.
So that problem with it, did you not feel guilty? Because especially speaking of Christianity, and this is something that, you know, I'll probably go into in a solo episode a little more. This isn't an indictment on the faith as a whole, right? Because I always say my relationship with Christ, Christianity is so fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I just love Jesus top to bottom. However, people get on my nerves and their interpretation and application of who Jesus is what irritates me, right? So knowing this as somebody in the church, the idea that divorce even comes on the table, you know, when you're starting to know something is changing or something has to change, whatever it is, how do you reconcile that? Like real talk, it's a difficult thing, especially in a pastoral role, you know, like to be able to say, and this isn't an indictment or judgment. This is a question I had to face as well, because before we're answering the big question people have, how do I know it's time? One of the things, no matter you've done all this identification, you still have to answer yourself with your faith too. Is this something that's okay? Because society has told me it's not, or in some areas, some versions of Christianity, you know, what does that look like to choose you?
It went against everything that I had known.
That's right.
We teach a very sacrificial life. And I started saying, but I'm not the living sacrifice, not for this marriage, not for this faith. I got to the point so low that I thought I would rather go to hell.
Listen.
I'm going to have hell on earth or I'm going to have hell on the other side.
Listen.
Either way, we are not doing this. Something inside of me, it was like the depths of my person was waking up. And it was like, you wake up. And I would look at the congregation. I would look at everything we built. And I had such a broken heart over it all, because I realized that if this has to cost me my faith, and this was a faith, this is 2 theology master's degrees. This is 20 years of my life.
A congregation is your community and your family. Everything.
And this church was the only church I'd ever been a part of. I was born in this church. My mom, my grandparents, I had never even joined another church. So we're talking
history.
Everything to me. All the sacrificing, the future, the promises of what we would become and what we would build and how we would help. And all of that was on the line. And to me, I'm like, why would God do this to me? Where the choice for me had to be with everything I've ever known.
That's right.
As the cost. Like,
that's right.
I'm like, you could have given me a lower level kind
Listen, don't we say this all the time? I'm like, come on, Lord. All right, it feels like a lot. But what's funny is it feels like a lot, but it really, that price is never that much.
It's never.
Your new life will cost you your old one. And that is okay. And it's interesting because what you just said, Dr. Anita Phillips says that any trauma is, her definition of trauma is anything that makes you question humanity, the world, or God. And so if you are experiencing some level of trauma, which again, not saying that that's happening, you can be in a relationship with someone who's a good, great person, but if there is an alignment, it will cause a trauma and a friction in your life.
Absolutely.
One way or another. And so, knowing that there's trauma happening and you're saying, I'm willing to give it all up. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize as part of, to help you answer the question. If you're listening, if you're saying to yourself, you're willing to give it all up in order to have peace, that is one of your signs right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
That it is time to go.
So I wish I can say that I sought, this is something I prayed about for many, many years. This was one of those prayers of, God, just help me. Yes. God, be with me.
There's another way. There's a different anything.
I've been praying those prayers, okay? That prayer got answered in divorce, okay? Every prayer that I had prayed in my marriage got answered.
The easy
in
route.
divorce.
Listen, there's even biblical precedent for that. God prayed for everything. Jesus prayed for everything. He said, Lord, I do not want to die on this cross. I don't want to. He specifically said, I don't, is there another way? Because he is human. He was like, I know what you are saying is to come to pass and I am not interested. And
is there another way?
You can do something else. And he said, no. He said, this is what it is. And this is what you were sent to do. And he was like, okay. And he went and did it. And mind you, he did that also knowing he would come back. And he was still afraid to go through the pain of it. So all of us who've gone through divorce, just so you know, we're all still standing here. And we're all on this other side of it, and you'll get through if you're feeling this question about yourself too. And I don't say this as an advocate of divorce. I am an advocate of love and marriage to this day. But if you're saying to yourself, is this something I need to do? Just don't let the fact that you don't think you'll get through it be the reason you don't.
And I think for me, I didn't know 100% if divorce was the way. I knew 100%.
We want it to be everything else but that, though.
I knew 100% that I had to take the next right step. And I just kept getting clear on the next right step. I need to file. The next right step.
How long did it take you to file? It didn't happen right away, right?
It did not happen right away.
Same here. I think a lot of women are also under that perception too, which is, so for me, it took me almost a year to file. And I think that surprised people too, because they think that when you leave or when you finally say, okay, this is no more, that you go the next day and file your papers.
Oh, no.
And that's not what it is. You're agonizing.
I'm thinking about my children. I'm thinking of other ways.
Is there other ways? For me, it was well, maybe we can decide without having to go through the court stuff, or maybe we can this, but it's y'all, that's not how that works.
Yeah, because the pandemic happened in 2020 and my divorce didn't get filed until 2022. So I was experiencing a lot of emotional change.
That's right.
A lot of questioning, a lot of wrestling. But I still, in January of the year we filed, said, let's go to couples therapy.
Oh, yes.
Because I thought,
You just want to
Surely.
be sure, though. You know, I think that we
Exactly.
did couples where I want to know we did everything.
We did everything possible.
Everything.
And that was not helpful
Yep.
for me.
Yep.
It was already, it was just too late.
If anything, couples therapy solidified it for me.
You did. For
Because
me too.
when the individual therapy meets the couples therapy, you start saying, "Oh wow, I'm sitting across. The person sitting here is not the person pre-therapy for
Yeah,
me."
yeah, exactly.
So now that I'm here, I get to really look at what I'm facing, and I'm like, "Oh wow, I am making the right call." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was just like you said, knowing I've done all that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it happened pretty quickly.
Yep.
Everything just kind of fell into place and had to do the tough work. So when it comes to making decisions, I think I got laser focused on the next right decision.
Yes.
And I tried not to get overwhelmed. Now, mind you, I'm in a dark, dark place.
Oh, girl, the depression. I lost 22 pounds from not eating, and people are looking at me on the internet like, "Oh, she's looking good. Oh, she's getting lipo. Oh, she's on Ozempic." I was depressed. My therapist was literally telling me, "You need to eat," and I was like, "I just can't."
It nearly killed me.
It kills you
because I didn't have the infrastructure.
What were some of the things that you were experiencing? Because this might be helpful too for anyone listening. People don't recognize that your body breaks down from stress. And you've talked about this openly before, some of the signs of stress and depression that you were experiencing in anticipation of this. And we're only using divorce as a big decision, but y'all, this could be quitting your job.
It
Your
sure
job
can be.
still do these sorts of things to you. So what were some of the body things that you think you were
I
experiencing?
had a lot of brain fog. I was having hair loss.
Mm-hmm.
I was sometimes
Those edges, gone, girl. What edges?
The cortisol in my body
Listen.
could never really maintain weight. It was just I would lose a lot of weight, then I would gain weight back. It was just a feeling of dis-ease.
Mm-hmm.
There was
It's
something
a sickness.
that was not working well, and my body was responding. Anxiety, feeling like the other shoe was gonna drop.
That's right.
Always kind of tensed up.
That's right. Trust issues, like who can
Not
I talk
feeling
to? How's it
safe.
work? Not feeling safe.
I was isolated.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when that announcement went out on social media, which I knew we were divorcing,
Oh, of course. Of
I
course.
just didn't know on that day at that time
How we're gonna handle
that
it.
the
Yep.
entire world was gonna learn about that.
Yep.
People, friends I had that I had not talked to.
Then it's like follow-up phone calls, text messages, because also as a public
Yeah.
figure, it's a lot. You know what I mean?
I got a text message that said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, yes.
And they said, "It's all over the internet." And I went on Instagram and I had a primal scream. I literally dropped to the floor, and I experienced for the first time what it felt like for the world to completely open up underneath my feet. Okay. And it wasn't just that the marriage was over, it was that my biggest fear had come upon me.
That's right.
And everything that I had built in my old life was done. I didn't speak to the friends that I had, the people I traveled the world with. So when it comes to making decisions, in the midst of all of this breaking and caving in, I couldn't even fathom a month from now.
That's
I
right.
just knew, wake up tomorrow.
What's in front of me? Listen, when I tell you, I
Wake up
remember
tomorrow.
standing in my kitchen coaching myself and being like, "You need to eat something.
Mhm.
You need to get out of bed today.
Yep.
You need to go outside." When was the last time you went outside and breathed air, Nicole?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a healing point.
I walked like 25,000 steps a day.
Listen,
That's the only way I survived.
The walking, right? So that's the other part too, is there's in stages, there's okay, got to get out of bed. And then when you finally get out of bed, I just need to move. I need to keep moving. And then before you know it, you look up and you're like, where am I? I was walking from, if you're from California, you'll appreciate this, Marina Del Rey to Santa Monica and back.
Wow.
Walking. And that's not a crazy walk. People who are very fit can do it. But when I say I would blink and I look up and see the pier and be like, how'd I get here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of a daze,
is.
because you're just trying to function like a human. And animals do this. There's scientific studies that animals will just start walking and roaming and all of that. So all that being said, and y'all, I hope you're keeping track of this chain of events, and it really helps you, is, there was individual discovery that was happening in therapy, which was leading to a realignment of values that were always within. So you always knew this, but you were rediscovering yourself.
Absolutely.
And then once you'd rediscovered yourself, it made it difficult for you to stay where you are once you knew something
Yes.
about you. So kind of if you're in your job, if you are like, man, I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in however long, and now I've started doing watercolor and I can't go to my desk every day. It's because you rediscovered something new.
It's so true.
And so then after that, it became, okay, I have to start, I guess, changing some things, creating some boundaries, some limitations. So for you, did that look like starting to explore what your life, for me, it was looking into what does my life look like now without this marriage?
Yeah.
You know, does it look like getting a new place? Does it look like, because I also have my babies, you know, making sure they're good. Like, what does that look like? Was that what you did next? Or did you just kind of say, hey, you know, it's over, so let's just start executing? Like, what came in between?
I had to do a lot of work and boundaries. And surprisingly, a lot of that work came through friends and family.
Wow.
Because my marriage was now over.
Sure.
So how am I going to build this skill in that relationship, co-parenting, dealing with divorce, all that? And I found that I got a lot of challenge or testing to see if it was working through regular people that I interface with every day.
Let's talk about that. Okay. I love a good boundary chat, because boundaries completely, when I tell you, when you rediscover your personal values and a sense of identity, you start realizing how many people you let into your life that don't care about your boundaries, that have their own issues.
It's unbelievable.
It is wild. Like,
and I had no boundaries.
No boundaries.
I didn't have boundaries until like a year ago.
I offended my own boundaries. I literally would set boundaries for myself and break them. Okay, I had no boundaries with me, you know? So this is the real. So what you're telling me right now was, before you even had to make calls with the big decision around the divorce, you had to practice some of this behavioral stuff with other people. And I mean, and this is part of why you're such a good guide for this type of work, because where you might go to therapy, where you might be working with your, you know, your pastor, whatever, when you work with Myesha, what is happening is you have someone side by side with you who knows how to put what you're learning into practice.
Yes.
And that's the difference. So you've survived this. So what did it look like? Those conversations must have been hard, because people did not know this, Myesha.
Well, because when I was a pastor's wife, if someone came up to me and asked me to pray for them and I said no,
that's not allowed. What are you talking about? That's your one job.
I would be talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks.
If I had sat down, they'd be like, we need to talk.
Right.
Yes.
So it trained me to not have boundaries. It trained me to not look at what I want.
They're always allowed access to you.
I don't feel like praying for you right now. I'm happy to do it when it's convenient for me.
That's right.
That would be, it's asinine to think about that.
It's unheard of. And also the not feel like part, I think that so often people don't realize that just because I don't feel like doesn't mean I'm a bad person or that I don't want to. It's that maybe you didn't catch me in a good space. Don't you want the best version of me to meet you in your moment?
Yeah.
You do not want your pastor's wife praying over you if she's dealing with some stressor in her life
that you know nothing about, that I can't even speak about.
I don't want advice from you on marriage if your marriage isn't going right. Go solve that and get where you're good to then speak to me. So you started practicing these boundaries with others.
I did.
How did that look for you? Like,
it was very, very
responsive?
scary.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be liked. I used to feel like I wasn't attractive. I just wanted always people to value me from the outside, but I wasn't valuing myself. And I was expecting external fulfillment in ways that I had not built that internally. So boundaries for me was, even if you don't like me, that was so hard for me.
It's so hard
to say, I can't loan you money.
Yep.
I'm not going to be there at your wedding. I'm not even going to answer your text message.
Ooh.
And even now, in the dating world, if someone doesn't respond to me the way that I need to be responded to, I'm not even engaging with you ever again.
That's right.
And I would have never
thought that you'd be there.
So it was scary at first. It crushed me in a lot of ways, because I had to finally say, Myesha, you need to be enough for you. And until you have a better relationship with you, stop looking outside.
This is so good, because I hope all of you are hearing right now that if you don't have the ability to say no to things that you don't want to do, or if it fills you with like a anxiety or a fear or concern, or you're a fierce people pleaser, understand that whether it is your friendships, your relationships, your business, or your marriage, being a people pleaser means that you're likely in those situations allowing your boundaries to be crossed. It's very difficult to have one and not the other. You can't have a great workplace and also be a serial people pleaser with no boundaries.
You cannot. And you know what was even more surprising about all this? When I was in ministry, when I worked with my ex-husband, I could always blame him and I could blame the church and
toss it over there.
But being on my own and building my own business, it was like, this is you. And if this client wants more than you want to give, You have to solve that.
You have to figure it out. Or if you want to charge more, it's up to you. You can't toss it up. You can't let someone else close it. You have to, and also you have to develop the skills that are a gap in between all of that. And also recognizing, I will say, at least for my own boundary work, recognizing how complicit and responsible I was for a portion of the treatment that I received within my marriage. And that is so difficult because it's so easy to want to blame, but if you blame or if you shovel the responsibility on someone else, then you're also not going to have change in your present, and that's something that I'm learning from you, and just kind of how you are really, you've grabbed the bull by the horns. You are moving forward with your life. You're doing your own self-discovery in order to make sure you're living a life you want to have.
100%.
So, but boundaries and people pleasing, like, whew, hard.
It's hard, but it's possible. And guess what? It has led me to discover parts of me that were there but hidden all along. Like, I love being able to take charge of my life. I love being able to share and speak and tell people how I want to be treated.
Yes.
How I want to be handled. And then making decisions that support that.
Yes.
That if you don't handle me this way, that's
I'm not
okay.
gonna be here.
Yeah, that's okay. Just having good luck.
Good luck. And it doesn't mean anything about either one of us. When I tell you there's nothing more freeing, and I don't know if it's like a divorced woman thing, but when you meet other women who are able to say, look, I may have gone through, sometimes when I find out like the truth about people's exes, I'm like, wow, you talk about him so much nicer than he deserves. You know what I mean? Like you have no idea, like some of this, and they're just like, yeah, honestly, I've done my own work.
Yep.
So I'm aware of how I was complicit, and I knew what I was looking at, and I knew what I was dealing with. And you just really learn that, like, wow, these women are really on a different level. You know what I mean?
I say it all the time. I wanted love, and this was the way that I went about getting it.
That's right.
And it was real to me, and I thank God for every experience, because I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
That's right.
I'm very thankful, and I practiced that throughout my divorce. I would say 3 things I'm grateful for.
Ooh, that's good.
Used it as a learning opportunity.
That's so good.
I will not die and leave this life living a fraction of who I was meant to be.
Oh.
And if the cost of me living the life of who I was meant to be is doing a lot of hard stuff, I'm willing to do the hard stuff. It's necessary. And it's been great.
It has been great. You're thriving. I love it. If you guys don't know, Preachers of LA is actually coming back to the air for a reunion special, and you'll see a little clip of Miss Myesha on there. So definitely, support, but also know that, Myesha, I mean, we've touched the tip of the iceberg here, but I think a lot of people who may have been sitting in their decision making now and are feeling stuck are able to say to themselves, okay, cool. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what the heck are my values? So if I don't know what those are, I can go to therapy. I can, they could work with you to kind of get some more clarity around it. But after they figure out their values, then they need to figure out what the boundaries are that they need to put in their life. And then really they're ready to move. Now, I know that you have a system where you walk people through all of this, and you do like retreats and events. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your retreats are like? One's coming up in Bali. I'm trying to go to Bali.
I know we're about to go to Bali, but it's about getting us out of our contacts and working through some of these things, giving clarity, putting an action plan. I'm an executor.
Yes, you are.
My strength is getting it done.
Well, you have multiple businesses. I mean, how big is your warehouse that you had? It was like,
it's a venue. It's about 30,000 square feet.
I mean, that is ridiculous. Like, I mean, so you have set up and executed whole businesses, run congregations, manage your family, manage yourself, rebuilt a life. So, I mean, you really are a go-to resource for setting up these sorts of things, but you can't do it without the right mindset. So you go to these retreats, and that's what you work on.
Yeah, it's about life change. Bali was where I went to have my awakening.
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
Where I
went
online.
to LA. What was I thinking? This place is a mess. What is out here? What am I even doing? I was like, that was my budget, Bali.
See?
Let's go to LA.
But you had to bring your light out here.
It's true. So can we talk about how so many women I know, that's a thing, is like when you are trying to figure out the next step, you just got to get out of wherever you are.
Oh, yes.
I was just so in the thick of it. I was like, I can't even see here. I need to go 3,000 miles away. You went 24-hour flight away.
I did. And Bali was where I was like, okay, here's the master plan. Here's
it's
what
so
we're
quiet
gonna do.
almost.
It is.
Because there's
so
nothing
peaceful
around you. Like I went to Marina, which is right by the water. I was like, there's nothing else, no noise. And people think you're crazy because did you take your kids with you?
I didn't.
Neither did I, girl. So people really think that's nuts because they're like, it's such a different way to choose yourself, because people are like, how could you do that? Like, how could you go and not take your kids with you and all this? But it's like, I'm unhealthy and I'm not well. As long as my kids are safe and secure, for that time frame.
Yeah.
Let me go build something that I can bring my kids into. And it sounds like that's what you did. You got yourself well.
And I
so
put
that you
myself
could-
in the center of my universe.
That's right.
For the first time ever.
To
I
be
think
healthy.
things are in balance now.
Oh,
And I can be a better mom, and I can be a cool friend and a great daughter and a sister. And it seemed like everything in my life became more aligned the more aligned I became with myself.
I think that right there is a point. So that said, where can people find more alignment? Where can they go to learn more about you? And I know that there are some women right now who are saying to themselves, I've got a decision. And if I can just take one step in the direction I need to take with this decision, it would change everything for me.
Yes.
And Myesha, I just need you to stand next to me. Where can they go to find more about you?
You can go to myeshachaney.com. You can find videos, all the things on Instagram, YouTube, any kind of social platform.
I love that. And y'all will have the details in the show notes below. And of course, Myesha, provides that one-to-one support, and she's available to talk. I mean, as you know, First Lady style, she's great. But when it comes to having an actionable system that you can apply to move from where you are to where you want to be and be unstuck. And, it may not be divorce. Maybe as a first lady, you were keeping people in their marriages, both ways. So
of course.
I love it because once you've been divorced, you meet people who are like, I'm struggling with this in my marriage. And you're like, oh, that's not even a divorceable, honey. You just need to go to therapy real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Get back in there. I almost feel like I can keep people in their marriages now because I'm like, no, I know what the whole process is like. You don't want this.
Yeah, you're like, here, all you got to do, trust me, just do these few things and you'll be good.
That's right. You don't even want the divorce process. You're actually fine. Or this is normal. That's the other part for the young ones. I'm always like, no, what you're dealing with is actually normal. You're just rushing to divorce.
Yeah.
But this is just normal. So yes, you're living with someone now, and obviously they're not clean all the time. Have the conversations.
I know, figure it out.
Figure this one out. So no matter where you are, whether it's figuring out the job or the parenting or the next baby or whatever, Myesha is a great resource for that. And I just am so blessed that you came here and shared your story so vulnerably with us, and especially as a public figure. It's tough sometimes to expose ourselves and put ourselves out there, but it really is a blessing. And I'm grateful that you show up the way you do. And I'll be texting and hitting you up too because I got decisions to make.
Come on, let's go.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.